God loves you. Here's something incredible about Malachi.
This video, we can speak about Malachi 4. Malachi 4 is the final chapter before we meet Matthew. Malachi 4 speaks and opens with a judgment announcement. So here Malachi concludes in the final book before the New Testament that there is a judgment coming. Says the Lord of hosts, and it shall not leave root or branch. We are all facing that because the punishment for sin is death, and it is speeding towards us all. But unto you that fear my name shall the Son of Righteousness arise. Who is speaking? We just heard that it is the Lord of hosts that's speaking. What is translated as Lord in English, in Hebrew goes to the holy name of God. In that name, you can hear the breath. And the first time we meet that name in the Bible, it is said of God under that name that He has breathed out His breath to give life. Thus, the one who breathed out His breath to give life, being the one that is, He is the God of battle. He has fought the battle of breath. And He says, all will be burned to stubble. There is no life available because of this judgment that's coming for the sinners. But unto you who fear my name, says God who breathed out His breath, you who fear my name. Name in the Hebrew ties with authority. Name ties with your character, with your renown. You who fear the report, the renown, the authority of the breather outer of His breath to give life. Who is speaking? We just heard that it is the Lord of hosts that's speaking. What is translated as Lord in English, in Hebrew goes to the holy name of God. In that name, you can hear the breath. And the first time we meet that name in the Bible, it is said of God under that name that He has breathed out His breath to give life. You who fear my name. Name in the Hebrew ties with authority. Name ties with your character, with your renown. You who fear the report, the renown, the authority of the breather outer of His breath to give life. You who fear Jesus, in whom this was fulfilled. You who fear that Jesus has died in the stead of you. You who fear that report.
But unto you who fear my name shall the Son of Righteousness arise with healing in His wings.
You who have reverence for it. Unto you shall the Son of Righteousness, to you shall the light of resurrection arise. The healing in His wings will be restored. We will be cured. That is in His wings. The word in Hebrew for wings ties with end. If you think of a bird, the wing goes to the end of that bird. It is the uttermost part, the extremity. It also has a tie with spreading out, going lateral. Under His extremity, under His end, under His going lateral, in the death of Jesus, we will know healing. We who fear His report.
And you shall go forth and grow up as calves of the stall. This is the most incredible meaning.
And we will go forth, we will appear and grow fat. We're spreading out like calves. It's incredible. A calf, like a playful little animal, revolves. Alright, so there's a tie with revolving in calves. So we will grow fat, we will spread like revolving. We who die will know resurrection, being turned revolving. We will revolve like a calf because of Jesus. A calf that is stall fed, in other words, tied. We are tied to Him. We are tied up to Jesus because Jesus has taken, so to speak, laid in our tombs in the stead of us, because Jesus has opened our tombs under His wings, under the end of His extremity. We are healed, revolving like a calf that is tied to Him. God, it's incredible. Malachi 4 is the most beautiful thing you've ever heard. And it continues on. And He gives us the instruction. He says,
remember ye the law of Moses my servant, which I commanded him in Horeb for all Israel.
remember ye the law of Moses my servant, which I commanded unto him in Horeb for all Israel, with statutes. Right on that first level, in the literal, take it as literal. Right, it stands. There is another level, and we're going to speak about that just now, and that stands as well. right? That doesn't mean the first doesn't stand. So you must try your best to follow the commandments of God, not to get yourself into heaven, but as a sign of your love to God. God says, if you love me, follow my commandments. And God's commandments protect us, they are good. David contemplated the commandments of God, came to the conclusion that they are good, and they are good because they protect us. If we respect it, it helps our lives to be blessed. It helps us to give love to God and our neighbors if we follow that. So indeed, we must not go against God's laws. Jesus' redemption of us is not to make us in a place where we have no regard for God's laws, then we don't love him. But if we sin, if we try and we fall and we sin and we really want to please God, but now we have transgressed, there is mercy for us in Jesus. So we are to remember the law of Moses, but there is more, because there is a prophecy in this as well. An incredible blessing. How awesome is God that even in his laws whereby we are convicted, there is a blessing. Those laws protect us in the earthly, in the little, but there is a deep blessing in them, because we find that law, the word law in Hebrew, ties with flowing like water, right? The type of teaching that flows like water. Water in Hebrew ties with wasting. So thus we are to remember the flowing like water. Jesus flowed like water. Jesus died. And we are to remember the flowing of wasting of Moses. There's a prophecy in Moses. Moses ties with the one that could come up from the wasting. Moses is the one that was hidden amid the waters and then rose, remember? So we are to remember the flowing of death of the one that was able to rise. Remember Jesus. Remember Jesus. My servant ties with executioning. You must remember the law, the flowing like water, the teaching of the one that could rise from death. His executions. Remember Jesus who has died, which God has commanded. This was set in order at Horeb. Horeb ties with being destroyed, by entering wasting. Jesus was crucified, bleeding, drying out, wasting, fulfilling the prophecy of Horeb. So we need to remember the flowing like wasting, the teaching of the one that could rise from wasting, prophesied in Moses, the same deliverer, fulfillment of Jesus. Remember the teachings of Jesus who flowed like water, that was set in order by God at the place of drying, at wasting. It is for Israel. Israel ties with the final section of that word. You can hear El, God's might to turn. God who has might to turn things around. And the first section of that word ties with having the power to prevail. So this is flowing like water that was given the one to rise at the place of drying. This death testimony that was given Jesus at Golgotha, it was given for God's power to prevail and turn things around, prophesied in the word of Israel. Israel means in Eli, God is mighty to turn, and in Sarah, the first section of that word in the Hebrew ties with power to prevail. Because he has died, God does have the power to turn things around. Because now the punishment for death is fulfilled. The Horeb has been taken. Do not forget that Jesus is your only way.
Behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord. And he shall turn the hearts of the fathers to the sons, and the hearts of the sons to the fathers.
Behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and terrible day of the Lord. See that God sends forth Eliyahu. The Bible is more prophetic than you can ever imagine. There is prophecies that will blow your mind to help you to know that your breath is in the name of God. His name ties to breath, did you know? His name ties to the one that can turn the darkness. And in the combination of those two names of God that we encounter in Genesis 1 and 2, Eliyahu, if you put them together, you hear the name of Elijah the prophet, because Elijah's name is a prophetic sentence itself. Eliyahu is the two names of God that we encounter in the Bible, and it is a sentence. It's actually a prophetic sentence. In Eli we find God, the Creator, the Mighty One that we read in Genesis 1 has turned the darkness to light, that can turn things around, has the might to do that, and he is Yahweh. It's the same God. Yahweh, in that incredible meaning of that word, being the one that he is, the one that's got life. But we read the first time we meet that name in Genesis 2, that he is the one who has breathed out his breath to give life. That's how he gives life in the first place. In other words, the one, Eli, the one that has the might to turn things around, is the one that breathes out his breath to give life. And he is the one that has life, that is. So he breathes out and he is. It's filled in Jesus. Jesus breathed out his breath to give life. And when he did breathe out his breath, fulfilling, when he breathed out his breath, he turned the darkness. At the moment Jesus breathed out his breath, the darkness that was there prior, remember it was dark on the face of the earth when he was on the cross, he turned the darkness by his breath, because Eli is Yahweh. Eliyahu has the testimony of the death of Jesus, and the might of God turned the death by his breath around to give us life and light. God sent us the testimony of Jesus, and he shall turn, Jesus' death shall turn the heart of the fathers. In the father in Hebrew we find it is got the meaning of the chief, right? The chief, like a chief principal of this house was the father, all right? It's a chief principal. He will turn the heart of the chief principal. What is the chief principle? What's that first principle that God said to Adam and Eve? The punishment for sin is death. And the heart in Hebrew, you think about your body as well in the literal, it's something that's in your innermost, pumping life force, your courage, right? In the metaphorical there, and we find it ties with enclosing. They're enclosed in the body, pumping force. He will turn the pumping life force, the innermost enclosing of the chief principle, to the children, right? To the sons. Son in Hebrew ties with building. He will turn the chief principle to the position of the building. He will turn the chief principle to the building block. When Jesus died, he took the chief principle on himself, and because he has died, that became the building block. He took the innermost enclosing of the death verdict to the Son. And he so turned the heart. He turned the innermost enclosing of the Son. He turned the innermost enclosing of that place of building of Jesus who has died. That is now the building block. He has turned that to become the chief principle. Right? So we have a revolution here, a revolving. There's the hearts of the fathers, the hearts of the Son. Heart ties with innermost enclosing. So he's taking the innermost enclosing, like the courage of that chief principle. Father ties with chief principle. What is the chief principle? Death. Right? Death verdict for sin. All of this is in the context of Judgment Day. Remember Malachi 4 starts with that. What is God doing? He's turning the chief principles enclosing. He's turning that courage of the death verdict over the Son, towards the Son. Alright? Jesus took it on himself. He's the one that in the image of the Son, that root goes to the anointed, the afflicted, able to build. The chief principle came to the Son. And the Son thus became over the chief principle, because he has taken that, because Jesus has died. He is now over. He was turned to the chief principle. Salvation. Jesus' name means Yahushua, God's salvation, is now our chief principle, because that chief principle was once turned to me. God is incredible. And that is done so that God does not have to come to smite the earth with a curse. Judgment and no life, and us burning to stubble without any possibility of resurrection, is averted by the death, the chief principle, enclosing heart, being turned to Jesus. Jesus, who is the builder, builds our safe hiding place. And he thus now is over that. He has ruled and conquered death, because death was once over him. And that is how God no longer comes to smite us. And in the very next book, Matthew, we read of the birthing of Jesus, the coming of Yahushua, salvation. It moves straight from this into the next as one. Malachi 4 ministers salvation in the face of an unimaginably impossible thing to solve. Our inevitable death that was stopped by God's clever dealing. That can only be done by what is prophesied in Elijah, the one that is about to turn, the mighty one, God, who is the breather out of his breath, and being the one that is able to rise, fulfilled in Jesus, and literally shown when he did it, the darkness was gone. And to us who know and remember that, who embrace Jesus, there is now the possibility of healing under his wings, under his ending, under his death. Because he was under death, he is now over it. And therefore we who are under his death can know the Son, the rising of righteousness. We can have salvation because of his death. If you do not want that, if you do not acknowledge him, because only those who fear his authority have that. If you reject the only way to love, that oven is coming for you. Please, please, run under the wings of Jesus. God has extended it to you. He has gone through the greatest excruciating lengths and depths to save you imaginable. And he's the only one that can. Run under his wings and know resurrection. Remember the commandments because you love God in the literal. Strive to follow them, it will bless your life and the lives of the people that have to live with you. But in the depths, remember, the one prophesied in Moses, the one able to rise from death, who did flow like water in Jerusalem, was wasted and died, so that you under its wings can have healing. And God does not need to smite you. He loves you. Hold fast. There is none like